Empires never fall overnight. They crumble quietly, not from swords or bombs, but from the slow death of their money. Rome did it. France did it. Even mighty China did it. Every great civilization, once rich in gold, ended drowning in paper. So here's the question. If printing money brought every empire to its knees, what makes us think this time will be different? In ancient Rome, the denarius, a small silver coin, built an empire. But as wars drained the treasury, emperors found a shortcut. Dilute the silver, print more coins. Sound familiar? Within a century, Rome's currency lost nearly all its value. Soldiers demanded more pay. Bread prices exploded. And soon, the greatest empire in history couldn't afford its own army. Imagine a Roman legionary, battle-hardened and loyal, staring at the silver coin in his palm. It feels lighter than it used to. Less real. He fought for this, bled for this. But as he tries to buy a loaf of bread, he finds his wages are nearly worthless. This isn't a scene of battlefield defeat. It's something far more insidious, a decay from within that has toppled empires more surely than any invading army. What if the greatest threat to a civilization isn't a foreign enemy, but the very money it prints? Throughout history, from the sun-baked streets of ancient Rome to the bustling markets of imperial Spain, a pattern repeats. It starts with a simple problem. An empire has big ambitions but a small treasury. Wars are expensive, grand monuments cost a fortune, and the public demands services. The temptation to create more money out of thin air becomes irresistible. In the 3rd century, the Roman Empire faced constant invasions and internal strife. To pay its massive army, emperors began debasing their currency. They would melt down silver coins, mix them with cheaper metals like copper, and then mint more coins than they had silver for. A coin that was once nearly pure silver became, over decades, little more than a silver-plated piece of bronze. Think of an empire's economy like a giant swimming pool. The water is the real value, the goods, the labor, the resources. The money is just a claim ticket for a portion of that water. When the government starts printing endless claim tickets without adding any more water to the pool, each ticket becomes worth less and less. Suddenly, everyone has tickets, but there's not enough water to go around. This is inflation. The Roman soldier, with his pocketful of debased coins, was experiencing this firsthand. His wages might have stayed the same in name, but their actual purchasing power had collapsed. This process is a slow-motion addiction. At first, the influx of new money feels good. The government can fund its projects, soldiers get paid, and the economy seems to boom. But it's a phantom prosperity. As people realize their money is losing value, they rush to spend it before it becomes worthless, driving prices up even faster. Savings are wiped out. Trust in the government, and in the very idea of money itself, evaporates. People resort to bartering, trading goods directly, like a sack of wheat for a pair of shoes. The complex, sophisticated economy that allowed the empire to flourish grinds to a halt. For Rome, the crisis point arrived in the 3rd century, a period fittingly called the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire nearly disintegrated under the weight of hyperinflation, civil war, and barbarian invasions. The debased currency fueled instability. Generals, unable to pay their legions with money that had any value, declared themselves emperor to seize loot and land. The economy fragmented. A farmer in Egypt had no reason to trust a coin minted by a short-lived emperor in Gaul. Trade routes that had unified the Mediterranean for centuries withered away. The economic glue holding the empire together had dissolved. The consequences were catastrophic and far-reaching. Without a stable currency, long-distance trade collapsed. The great cities, dependent on grain and goods from across the empire, began to shrink. Wealthy landowners retreated to their fortified country villas, which would evolve into the feudal manners of the Middle Ages. The sophisticated, interconnected world of the Roman Empire broke down into a series of isolated, self-sufficient communities. The very foundations of society were being rewritten, not by a conquering horde, but by a fiscal policy disaster. This story isn't unique to Rome. Imperial Spain, flooded with silver from the New World, printed money so excessively that it triggered rampant inflation across Europe and ultimately led to its own economic decline. The Yuan dynasty in China, the first to use paper money on a grand scale, also collapsed amidst hyperinflation from overprinting. The lesson from these fallen giants is a chilling and timeless one. An empire's strength is not just in its armies or its monuments, but in the trust its people have in its institutions. and nothing represents that trust more than its currency. When that trust is broken, when money becomes a tool for short-term political gain rather than a stable measure of value, the social contract begins to unravel. The prosperity that seems so permanent reveals itself to be a fragile illusion, easily shattered. The echoes of that Roman soldier's worthless coin still reverberate today, a constant warning from the ghosts of empires past. The pattern repeats again and again across centuries, because every empire believes it can outsmart history. So why does printing money always end in disaster? Imagine money as oxygen for an economy, vital, invisible, but deadly when overused. When governments print, they're not creating wealth, they're stealing it, quietly, from your future self. Inflation isn't a monster that appears out of nowhere. It is a shadow, born the moment someone decides to solve problems with a printer instead of production. The Romans diluted silver. The French revolutionaries printed assignats. The Germans, after World War I, filled wheelbarrows with worthless marks. Imagine a bustling marketplace, vibrant with the exchange of goods, dreams, and futures. Now, picture that same market, silent and desolate. Its stalls empty, its people's hopes turned to dust. What unseen force can turn a thriving society into a wasteland of despair? It's not war, it's not famine. It's something far more subtle, hidden within the very fabric of the economy. The mismanagement of money. How can something as abstract as monetary policy lead to such tangible devastation? Let's travel back to the early 20th century, to the Weimar Republic in Germany. After World War I, Germany was a nation on its knees, burdened with immense war reparations. The government's solution seemed simple: if we need more money, let's just print it. At first, it worked. The economy seemed to hum along, but this was a dangerous illusion. Imagine you're at a pizza party and there's only one pizza. Everyone has $1. A slice costs $1. Simple. Now, what if everyone suddenly had $100? The pizza hasn't changed, but now everyone is willing to pay more for a slice. Soon, that single slice costs $50 than $100. The money in your pocket is worth less. This is the essence of hyperinflation. The government printing press became a runaway train. To pay its debts, it printed more marks. To pay its workers, it printed even more. The value of the German mark plummeted with terrifying speed. Think of the nation's money as its lifeblood. The government, in a desperate attempt to heal a wound, had instead opened an artery. Every new banknote pumped into the system diluted the value of all the others, making the nation's economic blood thinner and thinner until it could no longer sustain life. People's savings, once a source of security, became worthless paper. A loaf of bread that cost a few marks in the morning would cost thousands by the evening. The fundamental trust in money, the bedrock of any economy, was shattered. The crisis reached its peak in 1923. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day, rushing to spend their wages before they lost all value. People carted wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy basic groceries. A lifetime of savings could barely purchase a cup of coffee. This wasn't just an economic statistic. It was a profound social breakdown. Bartering replaced currency. A pair of shoes was more valuable than a stack of banknotes. The middle class, the backbone of German society, was wiped out overnight. Their hard-earned wealth evaporated into thin air. This created a vacuum of desperation and anger, a fertile ground for radical ideas. The consequences rippled far beyond empty pockets. The economic chaos fueled political extremism. When people lose everything, they lose faith in the established order and become susceptible to anyone promising a simple solution, no matter how drastic. The hyperinflation crisis destabilized the young republic, creating a climate of fear and resentment that would have catastrophic consequences for the entire world just a decade later. We see echoes of this today. Look at countries like Venezuela or Zimbabwe, where similar stories of monetary mismanagement have led to widespread poverty, social unrest, and the collapse of civil society. The pattern is tragically consistent. When a government abuses its power to create money, it's the ordinary people who pay the ultimate price. The trust that holds society together unravels, thread by painful thread. So, what is the lesson here? The story of the Weimar Republic is a stark reminder that money is more than just paper or numbers on a screen. It's a social contract, a promise of value built on trust. When that trust is broken by those in power, the foundations of prosperity and even peace can crumble. It teaches us that economic stability is not a given. It's a fragile thing that must be carefully protected. The true wealth of a nation isn't in its printing presses, but in the prudence and responsibility of its leaders. Inflation is not just economic, it's psychological. It breaks the social contract. The poor can't afford food. The middle class loses savings. The rich flee with assets. And the empire built on trust implodes from within. Fast forward to today. The US prints $4 trillion in 2 years. Japan's debt surpasses 250% of GDP. Europe bails out its own banks. And every empire in denial says the same words. This time is different, but history doesn't care about optimism. The result is always the same: currency collapse, social unrest, and the slow erosion of empire. The Roman roads crumble, the French monarchy falls, the German Republic dissolves. What happens next is predictable. Chaos first, then a reset. A new system rises from the ashes, but always at a terrible cost. Every empire begins with real value, ends with printed lies. Money, once trusted, becomes illusion. The story of Rome, France, Germany, and maybe us isn't about economics. It's about hubris, the belief that paper can replace gold, or that promises can replace production. History whispers the same warning: print at your own peril. So, what do you think? Are we the next empire on the brink, or the first to escape the cycle? Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you found this exploration enlightening, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about the hidden forces that shape our world. Now I leave you with this question. In an age of digital currencies and massive government spending, are we paying enough attention to these historical lessons? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.